I just stepped out of this dealership here on the corner after one of the most unusual sales experiences of my lifetime. But perhaps more importantly, what happened inside taught me a great sales lesson that I would like very much to share with you. So if you don't mind, let's just stop right here on the corner and have a curbside chat just between two salesmen. I first met this dealer in September of 1956, and he's as nice a guy as you'll ever want to meet. We've been friends over the years, sharing many of our experiences together, and I rate him as one of my closest friends in the business. But today was the first opportunity that I had ever had to be in his dealership. Now, whether you know it or not, on my first contact, I always enjoy getting acquainted with the salesman first. Gives me an opportunity to study their proficiency and their ability in selling. Well, this experience all started about, 40 or 45 minutes ago, I suppose. I walked into the showroom looking for the salesman, and there was only one young man on the floor at the time, and obviously it was his floor time, so I walked up to him to get acquainted. He was a sharp-looking guy, had a neat bow tie, his suit was nicely pressed, his shoes had a good shine, and from my point of view, he looked like a potentially competent salesman. So without a second's hesitation, I walked up to him, extended my size 12 Texas hand, and I said, "Good morning. My name's Heartsill Wilson. I'm from Detroit, Michigan," and without any effort to take my hand, he just looked me straight in my baby blue eyes and says, "Well, goody for you." You know, I could hardly believe my ears. "But you don't understand," I said. "I'm interested in buying a car. Would you mind showing me a model or two?" "Oh, sure, buddy," he answered. "You go right ahead and look around, because I know you're going to shop some other dealers anyhow before you buy, so just take your time and look them over. Besides, while you're looking around, I've got just enough time to step across the street to the cafe and get a second cup of coffee before the old man starts asking questions about what happened yesterday. So make yourself comfortable, and I'll be back in a minute." And would you believe it? That with that, my erstwhile potential salesman went skipping off to the coffee shop. Well, about that time, the door to the service department opened, and a young man about the same age, I suppose, came in. He was kind of half asleep and seemingly not too interested in the fact that a customer was on the floor. So I walked over to him and I said, "Pardon me, I'd like to get some figures on that blue four-door hardtop over there. Can you help me out?" "Why, sure," he said. "I'll be glad to. I just wondered where Ralph is. He's supposed to be on the floor." I says, "You mean the blonde fellow with the bow tie? Or he just went across the street for a cup of coffee." And the second young man looked at his watch and says, "Egads, I didn't know it was so late. Excuse me for just a minute. I've got to go get a cup of coffee before the old man—" I said, "Yeah, I know. Before the old man starts asking questions about what happened yesterday." And with that, he was out of the door and gone. So I began to look for my dealer friend, the guy that was supposed to ask all the questions about what happened yesterday, and I found him sitting in one of the back offices reading the racing form. Well, after a good handshake and some loose but pleasant words about the family, a few words about his business problems, I told him what had happened to me on that showroom floor just minutes before. I told him that maybe his big problem was on the salesroom floor and not in the product or with the market as he had supposed. Because I'm sure that if I had been a qualified prospect, that those two salesmen couldn't have gotten the time of day from me, not to mention several $1,000s, and he was sincerely alarmed and filled with unbelief. I could see, looking through the office window, that both of the salesmen were walking back across the street from the cafe. So I said to my dealer friend, "Go over and stand behind the door, and I'm going to give you some floor action like you have never seen before in your life." And as the salesman came through the front door, I walked over to the bow-tie gent, and I said, "Ready to talk trading now?" And he looked at me with some small degree of disgust that many salesmen hold for shoppers, and he retorted, "Are you still goofing around here, bud?" And with that, the dealer bounced out from behind the door, and he shouted, "You are fired!" I said, "Gosh, don't fire him. He's better than the one coming in the door." "You are fired, too," he yelled. And then I turned to him in all the sincerity that I could muster, and I said, "Now, Charlie, you want to fire the right man? If you do, fire yourself." Because these two men were acting as they were for one of two very simple reasons. First of all, you have instructed them to handle your business and your customers and your future that way, or because of ignorance or a lack of interest and concern on your part for them and for your customers, you have permitted them to be so calloused. But whatever the reason, Charlie, they are doing it because you have permitted it to happen. I had no intent to put the young men on the cross or to embarrass my dealer friend, but here was an operation that had totally discounted the importance of people in their operation, and they chose to abuse customers in order to amuse themselves. Well, we talked the matter over for 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm sure that the dealer sees the whole thing in a different light now, and is a stronger friend of mine as a result. He agreed to keep these two young men on for another 2 weeks on a contingent basis, and I am confident that they will be finer salesmen, more profitable husbands and fathers because of the experience. But these kind of lessons are expensive, gentlemen, and totally unnecessary. Well, needless to say, I did learn a great deal about peopleology and salesmanship as a result of this experience, and I just thought it would be worth your while and mine that we talk just a few minutes about the importance of people to you in your future of selling. I don't know what was really wrong with the attitude in that dealership, nor do I know where it all began. It could have been a matter of kind of an osmosis in which the entire standard of conduct had been wasting away for weeks and months and even years, starting at the top perhaps and working down throughout the entire organization. But I do know that it must have cost many dollars and many deals over the years. I don't know whether you ever stop to think about it or not, but in many ways a salesman is like a mirror. He has a tendency to reflect the attitude, the thoughts, and the conduct of the dealer himself. We are natural-born followers, and as salesmen we gravitate to a good leader. We like sparkling leadership and creative sales ability, even when we don't have too much of our own, and we will reproduce enthusiasm for selling when we are given the opportunity. And I suppose by the same reasoning, we magnify the poor atmosphere of a dealership, and its disregard for the emotional rights and the privileges of the customers as well. But I'm sure that most of you will agree with me that regardless of how smart we may become, to what degree of success we might rise, we never outgrow our need for people. And if we as sales personnel intend to grow in stature and achieve a greater portion of success, somewhere down the line, people must become important to us. The old adage of easy come, easy go may work for a lot of products in some fields, but when it comes to people and how we handle them, if we don't pattern our conduct on service and courtesy and interest, the time will arrive in our business when it won't be easy come, easy go. It'll be hard come and all go, and that's what pushes the panic buttons on the profit and loss statement and sends the boss into orbit. Speaking of peopleology, I've always liked the statement that Will Rogers made to a press conference in New York one day when he said, "I never met a man that I didn't like." You know, I wish, seriously, that I could make that kind of statement myself, because I have found that liking some people requires a lot of work on my part. Yet I know at the same time that people hold the secret of success to every businessman I have ever met. People and success go hand in hand. You don't have to be a Harvard graduate to know that only people buy things. I've never seen a car sell another car, an automobile, in my life. So it's important that we get our peopleology in order before we can expect to do an exceptional job of selling. In traveling across the country and working with salesmen in every state, I have no trouble finding men that are ready, willing, and anxious to listen to me talk about how to close deals, how to get the signature on the line. But they become strangely disenchanted when we get ready to talk about personal conduct, the morals of salesmanship, the need for a good sales impression, how to handle a customer's inquiry, and how to show a personal interest in his behalf. It all sounds just a little bit too sticky and too bothersome for some people. Yet the only thing that many salesmen want to know is the inside of closing a deal, regardless of the work and the preparation needed to get to the closing point in the first place. I'll never forget an experience that was supposed to have happened in the State Department several years ago. There were 3 Chinese businessmen touring the United States at the invitation of the President, studying business methods and practices with the objective of taking home some of the management techniques that they had found here in our country. At a reception in Washington held for these 3 outstanding businessmen, one a prominent banker, and the second a successful business executive, and the third a highly respected farmer, a reporter posed this question: "What one thing would each of you like to take back home with you if you had the choice to do so?" Well, the banker responded very quickly. All he wanted was one city block of Wall Street and all that it represented, and he would be the happiest billionaire in the Orient. The executive knew what he wanted too. That great ship repair facility near Candlestick Park in San Francisco Bay. With it, he could capture the maintenance business of the shipping industry for half of the world. The farmer, however, studied the question for a few moments, and then he said, "If I had just one choice to make, I'm sure that I would like to take the hot water faucet from the shower bath in my hotel room, because very few people know the luxury of hot water during the cold winters in the frigid northlands of China." His answer was, in many ways, representative of the position that many salesmen take when you talk professional salesmanship to them. Like the Chinese farmer, they want only the results of selling. The Chinese farmer had little interest in the plumbing and the ditch digging, the pipes, the valves, and the insulation. He only wanted hot water. How many salesmen do you know that will show great disinterest in courteous conduct, have no desire to engage in interesting questions to qualify a prospect's needs and his wants, are as willing to work to get a better business association that will reduce resistance and let the sale be patterned along the first-person name route? No, they just want to forego everything in order just to pop a price or shoot a highball or flip a figure, talk terms, and get it over with quick so they can get back to something more important like the sports page of today's newspaper. That's exactly what I found in my friend's dealership, and I wonder right now if I could have found anything like it in yours as well. Those two men had no time for Heartsill Wilson as a person. They could not have been less interested in my likes and dislikes, or why I even stopped into that dealership in the first place. They were happy just to slip the shaft to me and head for the next shopper that might be foolish enough to drop in. Several years ago, in an effort to teach me the lesson of the importance of people in selling, my dealer in Tyler, Texas, called me in one day, right after I started selling for a living, and he began to give me one of the toughest sales assignments that I had ever experienced in my life. He knew and I knew that I was a green rookie salesman, and he knew it better perhaps than I did. But he wanted to see me grow. He wanted to see me improve. So he had a plan that had two objectives in mind. First of all, the first objective was to help me to get out of my bookkeeper's habits and practices and try to at least make me look like a salesman. And that was an uphill job from the very beginning. The second objective was this: to try to get our products sold in an area where the sale of trucks had been completely dominated by our competition. So here were his instructions. I was to go to a small suburban farming community near Tyler known as White House, Texas. In size, it was little more than a hole in the road in those days, a few stores, a school, a couple of churches. But many aggressive farmers who owned hundreds of trucks and thousands upon thousands of acres of the hottest, sandiest farming country that you've ever seen in your life. The object was this: stay as long as I needed to, but Heartsill, don't come back until you have sold some trucks. No ifs, no ands, and no buts. Frankly, I was concerned because the local farmers had not been doing too well financially, and they were a kind of close-knit group of people to begin with, and they weren't too hot for outsiders, especially salesmen. And here I was, a green kid that didn't have a choice left but to sell trucks in White House. My big question to myself was this: where in heaven's name do you start? Well, I suppose I spent half of the first day sitting in my car beside the highway just outside White House, just thinking. Finally, I decided that no salesman, I didn't care how smart he was, would be able to step into that town and blow the market wide open. If this could have been possible, someone would have done it before I tried. And besides, my dealer was a man that had a passion for profits, and he wasn't about to let me get benevolent with his money and give anything away. So there was just one answer left. Somebody had to help me, and that somebody lived somewhere in White House, and I had to find him, cultivate his friendship, get him on my side, and let him open the doors for me. So I went into that town to find that man. It took a week before I earned the confidence of Mr. Rushing, the local bondsman, a man that had a high regard for his neighbor and they for him. He owned a number of small farms in the area and operated a small 2x4 grocery store in the community. And believe me, I have never had so many strawberry soda pops and eaten so much crackers and cheese in my life, but the door did open. We became friends, and he began to introduce me to all of the other farmers, and he proved to me firsthand the great truth in Peopleology, and that is this: there is no such thing as having too many friends. I truthfully don't know how the registrations are now going along in White House, but I do know that after walking miles and miles in the hottest tomato fields in Texas, waiting endless nights in the barns for the tractors to come in where we could talk trucks with the farmers, and after picking ticks off of my leg by the dozen, we sold trucks in that community. The market didn't change, the product wasn't any better, but the big difference was Peopleology. Not the kind that I have just found in this dealership on this corner, but people sharing common interests, expressed in dollars willing to be spent with an individual that would take the time and the effort to be of exceptional service in a competitive market. And believe me, you can't be an outstanding success all by yourself. If I were selling in your shoes today and didn't have at least a dozen people of real influence, I mean big people at the bank or over at the Chamber of Commerce or officials in the city government working for me and working in my interest, I wouldn't rest until I made sure that I erased this sales weakness in my program for the future. I'd go out today. I'd get acquainted. I'd shake some hands. I'd learn some names. You need these people, lots of people, if you're ever going to get to the top. I doubt that you'll ever get there without them. because people make the difference. Even in the dealership, you need people. The service manager, the parts manager, even the mechanics, the parts clerks, the cashier, the bookkeeper, the floor sweepers. You sooner or later will need every one of them on your side, but you have to earn their friendship first. Remember this. The only salesman that doesn't have to worry about next week or next month's paycheck is the man doing the job of organizing himself to sell right today. How? By letting people help build his future for him. Uh-oh, excuse me just a second. I noticed that the violation flag has just gone up on my parking meter. If you give me just a second, I'd like to slip over and put a nickel in the meter. I'll be back with you in just a minute.